And in the words of Cody Rhodes, what do you want to talk about? Ladies and gentlemen, my name is not Paul Heyman. It is the Prince of Fresh Air. Welcome to the most overrated, underappreciated, most viewed, underviewed podcast of all time. Welcome to the Prince of Fresh Air. I'm, of course, your host, the most charismatic man in entertainment. I got 4 letters, 1 word, yeet. I am back. Welcome to another episode, 2026. We kicking this thing off. It's been far too long. It's good to be back behind the mic, behind the camera again, to entertain not only the masses, but the millions of people watching around. So, thank you for tuning into the episode. I'll be rocking out solo because I don't want to go in between too many episodes without giving you quality entertainment. So I am here to shine and put a smile on your face and also entertain you. So, we got a great show going on. The snow tried to catch me. I got sick, try to hold me down. But you can't hold down the most charismatic man. It just can't happen. I don't care what the booking is that Triple H does. You can't hold me down. Speaking of booking, we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff in this episode. A lot of things are going on in the entertainment industry, especially sports entertainment. So we will be talking about a lot of stuff going on. And I'm gonna break this down because I want to give everybody something to listen to. So, we're gonna break this off into different parts. But the first thing is first is I want to talk about a lot of things that's hard hitting right now in the WWE and the UFC TKO group. And I want to first start off talking about WWE because there's a lot going on. The Royal Rumble 2026 just happened. A lot of comments. John Cena's, retirement is officially, done. AJ Styles, retirement and at the Royal Rumble. A lot of stuff going on. So, I want to keep y'all waiting. I know y'all been waiting to hear me, and I'm waiting to entertain you guys. So let's get right into it. So, there's so much to talk about that's going on. And in the words of Cody Rhodes, what do you want to talk about? So we're going to get into it. So let's start off with John Cena. Last time I talked about John Cena in the WWE. I talked about John Cena's retirement tour, how it was going. John Cena, is officially retired. He has pledged. He's went on Cody Rhodes' podcast. What you want to talk about? And he has stated he's done. He's no longer a wrestler. And he talked about how a lot of people were upset about his retirement, how the whole tour went, how much planning went into his retirement tour. And it made it clear to me. And, a lot of people, unfortunately, in the internet wrestling community, as they like to call it, the IWC, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, had a lot of comments and complaints about John Cena's ending at Saturday night's main event when he lost to Gunther in Washington, D.C. First of all, ticket prices out of control, insane. $600 for some nosebleeds. I love you, Cena. It's not your fault, but holy cow. We'll talk about that down the line. But John Cena's retirement left a lot of people with a sour taste in their mouth. They felt like John Cena staring up at the lights, looking lost. The way how he lost. Tapping out to Gunther. It wasn't becoming of John Cena. Triple H, you are to blame. Triple H is going to come up a lot in this conversation. And, I just want to say, for people who are upset about the booking, John Cena, LA Knight, Jay Uso, whatever the case may be is, WWE is a business. And, someone like John Cena in particular is a company man. And John Cena owes WWE for what he's got. And he's talked about his upbringing. He talked about how he grew up, when he moved to LA, he was sleeping in his car, just trying to make ends meet, signing his first WWE contract. So he's very grateful, not only for the multi-millions that he's made, but the platform and the opportunity for Make-A-Wish and all that, all those opportunities to give back. And I think those things is going to be felt the most. John Cena was very selfless in his career, giving back to people, and just entertaining me and so many millions of people around the world as kids, as adults, as teenagers. He was there in everybody's household for over 20 years, and his presence and Make a Wish, giving back, is going to be felt. But one of the things he said was the wrestling industry moves on. WWE is going to move on. And a month removed, and, you could definitely feel that John Cena is not around anymore. But I think people have accepted it. And I think one of the issues that what makes people not want to accept it has been the booking lately. And we're going to get into all of that. I'm going to have a nice dedicated talk about that. But first, let's talk about the Royal Rumble 2026. A lot of stuff happened. Um, Jay Uso has been a big conversation. Roman Reigns, he's going to get a dedicated section. Acknowledge me, Roman Reigns. That's right. But four letters, one word. Mr. Yeet. A lot of people have been critical of Jay Uso the last couple months, and then it started at the Royal Rumble. Started way before. A lot of people have an issue with Jay and the fact that he's gotten over because one, he's Samoan, so he's part of the whole Roman Reigns Samoan dynasty family, and two, he's been known as the catchphrase guy. His theme song, his entrance, that's what he's been reduced to, and that's what makes him so popular. And he's getting all these unwarranted opportunities because of that. First of all, I think people need to stop complaining. There's one thing to complain about certain things, but Jay Uso got himself over. He was stuck in tag team purgatory for over a decade. Nobody gave him a chance to grow. And he was always just known as Big Jim, Jimmy Uso's twin. Then he became, Roman Reigns lackey during COVID. And then, he turned against Roman, and now he got himself over. He won the World Heavyweight Championship. And now people are complaining about how he's just getting all these undeserved main event opportunities, fighting for, contendership for the titles and stuff. And it's like, look, at the end of the day, WWE is a sports entertainment. And we're seeing it now. It's a big problem, unfortunately, in both WWE and UFC. But a lot of, the WWE is always leaned into the sports entertainment, especially more now than ever. But even during the Attitude Era, Stone Cold, The Rock, there's the names going on and on. The biggest stars from the Attitude Era and even before were the ones that not only knew how to cut promos, but they had catchy, phrases. Can get some what the Rock is cooking, and that's the bottom line. Stone Cold. Everybody has a catchphrase, and sometimes it's really up to the talent to get over. And Jay Uso has found the way to get himself over. He's not just Roman Reigns' cousin anymore. He's not just Rikishi's son anymore. He's not just Jimmy Uso's twin anymore. He's his own person. And I don't like how people are now bashing him for the one thing that they loved that got him over, which is being himself. I love the entrance. Is it overplayed? Maybe I could concede that to you. But, the Royal Rumble, Jay Uso comes out, does his entrance, comes down through the ring in Saudi Arabia. Everybody loves him, goes through the crowd, everybody's yeeting. And then he goes into the ring, has a little thing with Roman. He does his, rewind, and he goes do it again. Roman Reigns hit him with an uppercut, but that's been a point of contention with a lot of fans. A lot of people complain about the Royal Rumble, especially the men's Royal Rumble. They don't like, how a lot of things played out. Jay Uso's theme getting, over 5-10 minutes of play time, and so many important eliminations happening during his entrance. But you know what? At the end of the day, look, the WWE is in a tough spot. They don't have John Cena anymore. Roman Reigns isn't a full-time wrestler anymore. And I'm going to get to that in a second because a lot of people complaining about Roman, and I won't spoil everything, but if you know, you know. Jay Uso's like LA Knight. They have a catchphrase. They know how to, Jay Uso is an established wrestler. LA Knight might be, he might be a little tad better on the mic. I'll give him that. But they're both guys who are very serviceable in the ring, but they found an entrance, a theme, and a catchphrase that works and makes them money. And that's what the WWE is. John Cena said it best. You know, you have to find a way to get yourself over. And if you don't get yourself over, then you fall into the clog in the machine. And you don't want to be the guy sitting in catering every week waiting for opportunity. And Jay Uso, LA Knight, the list goes on and on. Jacob Fatu, they found ways to differentiate themselves from other wrestlers. And especially Roman, coming from a well-respected family, a bloodline, if you will, no pun intended. He had to find his niche, and he did. And I get that people complain about certain things and complain about how overused he's been. But again, that's always been WWE. They've always done that. When you have somebody who's hot, the fans are catching on. You go to the arena, they're setting it on fire. People were yeeting, even Michael Cole and all of them, even Pat McAfee when he's on his podcast, he's yeeting all over the place. That's the business. That's WWE. It's sports entertainment. And if you don't like it, I get it. Not everything's for everybody. But at some point you gotta let other people enjoy the program too. Not everybody's gonna be for everybody. But enough about Jey Uso. Let's talk about the meat and potatoes of this, and we're gonna get into the booking. But let's talk about Roman Reigns, because I've talked about Roman Reigns in the last WWE episode. Roman Reigns comes out before the Royal Rumble. He goes on the Pat McAfee show, and he talks about the WWE and the creative process. And he has some choice words about the product. He felt like nobody's been stepping up in his absence. And it's the product isn't where it needs to be. And he comes out and he wins the Royal Rumble. People, not everybody's upset, but you go online, you see a lot of people, Bleacher Report, all these different outlets, typing up articles as we speak, complaining about the Roman Reigns issue. The Roman Reigns issue is he's a part-timer, and that spot deserved to go to Femi, LA Knight, Javon Evans, any other superstar who isn't Roman Reigns, who are, whether they're the young new blood that just came up, or even established names like LA Knight, who just never was able to crack to the top. Now I'm gonna break this down. Femi is going to be featured in the next talking point. But people got to understand, Roman Reigns is the face of the WWE. As much as people love Cody, and I'm gonna get to him in a second, but Cody Rhodes was a guy that WWE got behind, and they wanted to make him a top star. But it's always been very clear and evident since 2018, even way before that, Roman Reigns was the guy to take over for John Cena. He was going to replace him. And, Vince McMahon saw it through, and Triple H took it through. And, Roman Reigns has established himself far, far in between from him to other superstars. The only person who can really compare themselves to Roman at this point is an agent CM Punk, who, no disrespect, but CM Punk is getting close to 50. So how many years he got left? But the biggest criticism by Roman isn't his character development, isn't his promos or his wrestling. Is that he's not a full-time wrestler anymore. He's a part-timer. People forget Roman Reigns is a guy who's suffering, from health issues, and it is well documented. He had to step away from the WWE little under 10 years ago for his leukemia. And he's been open, not as recently, but he's done interviews before talking about he has to take medicine for it, and he has to get it under control. He's in remission. And I'm pretty sure something like that, when you're young, young wrestler, young blood, you can power through it. But he has a family, a big family. He is 40 now, and he's trying to do acting. He's trying to step into my field. Roman Reigns, you better acknowledge me on that film set, all right? But Roman Reigns is trying to do the Dwayne The Rock Johnson, the Cena, the Batista route. dip his toes into Hollywood, plant his seeds. So when it's time, he can transition over. And it doesn't hurt that The Rock is, one of the biggest stars right now in the industry. But Roman Reigns, yes, he's a part timer, and I wish he would talk about it a little more, do more interviews addressing why that is. But it's pretty clear and evident based off past interviews that he's done. He loves his company. He loves wrestling. I just don't think his body can handle it full time. All the traveling, all being on the road all the time, being away from his family, having to, take his medication, taking care of his health. He's in the best shape of his life right now, but he's still suffering through that. And I think people forget that when you see somebody who might look, physically appealing, washboard abs, nice teeth, nice smile, you forget that people still have things going on the inside. And Roman Reigns is someone who's going through that. And I'm sure he's getting a handle on it. He has a handle on it, but I don't think he can handle a full-time WWE schedule at this point. Like I say, he's 40 years old. So, he's still got many years left. But at some point, like Cena said, you get to a point where you're slowing down, and especially if you already have pre-existing health conditions, that definitely has to take its toll on you. So, Roman Reigns definitely deserves to win the Royal Rumble, and I'll tell you why. Oba Femi and all of them, and that's how I'll get to them in a second. Never in the history of the WWE, very, very, very rarely in the last 20 years, a new face from NXT, maybe just showing up from the roster from another promotion. AJ Styles is a prime example when he crossed over in 2016, 10 years ago. Um, they very rarely ever win the big one right off the bat. Very rarely. And they will showcase them, give them a chance, because to go from in the case of Obafemi, Javon Evans, and a Trick Williams, to go from NXT, and they're big popular stars, but to go from that to the big show, to the major show, and win the Royal Rumble, maybe in the case of Oba, the first time he's on the main roster, for them to only a couple of weeks to a month, that's a lot of pressure, and you want to build them up to the main, audience, because not everybody know who Oba Femi is, or Trick Williams, or Javon Evans. Now everybody knows LA Knight is, but the problem with LA Knight is, we're gonna get to him in a second, but Roman Reigns is the face still. Cody Rhodes might be the top star in terms of full time, but Roman Reigns is still that guy. When the WWE wants something big done, they send out Roman. Yeah, they'll send out Cody when he's the champion, but when Cody isn't champion, they rely on Roman Reigns now that Cena's gone. And Roman Reigns has stepped it up. I'm sure people watched the Raw with him and CM Punk when he chose CM Punk. Cut one of the best promos he's ever done in his life. One of the most entertaining segments recently between two guys without wrestling. And it really set the stage for WrestleMania. And that's what the WWE cares about. They care about the storytelling, but they also care about the top dollar. The bottom line, they're still a company. And so for them, they look at WrestleMania like, people are going to be paying good money, expensive tickets to go see this event. What main event sells? What gives them, what makes people want to spend their hard-earned money to come see our product? As much as I like LA Knight, I don't think him and CM Punk would be a WrestleMania headline worthy match. So Roman Reigns is the star. He's the draw. CM Punk, still a draw. One of the best promo guys of all time, easily top 3. And CM Punk is up there in age. He's pushing 50. So why not let them build the storyline, because they have the history with the Shield, the pipe bomb, and so many things. That sells. That makes money. That sells tickets. That put butts in seats. So Roman Reigns is going to get that nod regardless. But at the end of the day, until the WWE is ready to push somebody to take over Roman's place, Roman Reigns is going to be that guy, just like Cena was that guy. Last year, one of the common complaints was, When John Cena's around, they know how to book. But when John Cena's not available, he's not around, the shows don't do as well. And that's partly because Roman Reigns wasn't part of the show either. Seth Rollins is out with an injury. A lot of our favorite guys are no, a lot of them are older. And in the case of LA Knight, a lot of people want to see him get that opportunity at the main event. Why has LA Knight not won a world championship or the WWE World Heavyweight Championship? Why? Same thing with Jey Uso. LA Knight has established himself with his catchphrase, with his name, with his entrance. His promo work is top notch. But LA Knight has a problem. The problem with LA Knight is one, he botches a lot on the mic. His wrestling isn't, and the same argument with Jey Uso. They're not exactly the most dynamic people in the wrestling ring. He has more of like a Stone Cold esque moveset, and he's also 41. LA Knight definitely deserves a chance. I'm not disputing that at all. But from a long term booking standpoint, from a business standpoint, yes, it would be nice for LA Knight to win the World Heavyweight Championship or the WWE Championship. But long term booking wise, he's not seen on the same pedestal as a Cody, as a Roman, as some of these other top stars. Randy Orton. Randy Orton is another one a lot of people complain about the booking about. But I want to jump too all over the place. But at the end of the day, Randy Orton is another one who definitely deserves the 15 WWE World Championship, title reign. But he's 45. The WWE they're in a place where they don't know where they want to go, in my opinion, because they still rely on Roman. Now that Cena's gone, they still rely on Roman as the main eventer. And they got their pieces, the Jays, the Codys, and all those people, but they don't know exactly who they want as the major star yet to replace Roman, who to start building up to replace him. Femi looks like that type of guy, but only time will tell. Speaking of time will tell, let's talk about the major issue going on with WWE. So every week, whether it's a pay per view, a Raw, SmackDown, people complain about the booking. AJ Styles retirement at Royal Rumble. People don't like how that match ended. They don't like the send off that they gave AJ Styles, and so many things. Let me talk about AJ first, and I'll talk about the booking. AJ Styles, on a quick note, one of the greatest of all time. Career is solidified. His what he's done in wrestling will never be uh, lost in the memories of fans, and he will always be regarded as one of the greatest crossovers, aka wrestlers of all time. Now, his retirement wasn't exactly the most ideal. It wasn't the greatest or the most phenomenal. See what I did there, right? But AJ Styles, I don't think we're going to see the last of him. We might see the last of him in WWE, maybe, but I think he'll have one or two more matches in TNA where it all started. And I know people expected a more grandiose exit for AJ at the Royal Rumble, but truth be told, AJ Styles has made it clear last year and the year before, hey, I'm up there now. I'm getting up. I'm 50 years. I'm about to be 50. My body can't handle this anymore. I want to retire, and that's why him and John Cena got that match in the fall of 2025 because they both know that their careers are closing. And AJ, with John Cena, I think people get misconstrued. They think Triple H sent John Cena out there to the slaughterhouse and don't care about him. John Cena wanted the more traditional type of WWE retirement. You go out, you put over the talent, the young talent who's going to be taking over, who's going to be in the company for many years. You stare up at the lights and that's your send off, looking up at the lights. John Cena chose to do that. And I think some people have accepted it after hearing his side of it. But John Cena is that type of guy to do that. He's selfless. He cares about the company. He cares about leaving it better than how he found it. AJ Styles is beloved, but remember, he's not WWE royalty in the sense that he's not John Cena, he's not a Randy Orton, he's not a Dwayne The Rock Johnson, he's not a Stone Cold or The Undertaker or Shawn Michaels. As phenomenal as AJ Styles is, he unfortunately won't get the same send off as Cena has, because Cena has put over 20 years of making so much money for the company, being the face, giving back, being that guy for so long. You have to give him a send off like that. And even then, people feel like they botched it. So, with AJ Styles, I do think he probably could have got a better send off, just a tad bit better. But I do think that, a lot of these guys, they come from a generation where it's not about me anymore. AJ Styles done his time. He's made his money. He's been on the posters. He's been in the bright lights. He's got to perform under the brightest roofs. It's time to let the new faces show. Let them, get the opportunity. And, a lot of times, unfortunately, selfishly, when we're fans of these people, when we're huge supporters of them, we forget that it's still a show. It's still WWE is a conglomerate. They're a business about making money. And sure, they have people who are long-term wrestlers who are basically the face of the brand, who people will always include in the WWE. John Cena will always be WWE. Same with Randy, same with The Rock. But they're still a business and they got to move forward. And so, AJ Styles, whether we see you again in 2026, the fans, I'm sure a lot of fans would love to see you. But if this was the end, if this was how you want to call it a career, thank you for all the years, decades of hard work putting your body online for our entertainment. And I just want to say thank you, Mr. Phenomenal AJ Styles. But let's talk about the booking. Like everybody's been waiting for. Everybody wants to hear me talk about this booking. Triple H. A lot of people have a lot of comments about Triple H, how he hasn't been the greatest since Vince. People thought he was going to come out and upsert Vince and do so much better than Vince ever done, which he has. I will give Triple H's credit that Triple H has made the product more social media friendly, family friendly, but also pop culture friendly. He knows that at the end of the day, WWE, the formula that worked before, the big muscle up guy that looked like Dave Bautista, John Cena, those days are gone. We're seeing the Javon Evans, we're seeing the Trick Williams, we're seeing, the Luchadors, Penta. We're seeing more different body shapes and sizes. We're seeing more athletic gifts going on. Montez Ford jumping over the top rope like he's just getting out of bed. The WWE is more about entertainment than it is about the sport right now. And a lot of people don't like how Triple H has been handling the creative, but he has been in tune with, okay, how do we grow the brand? You partner with commercials. You put he's been doing the commercials on the canvas. A lot of people don't like it, but that's just the nature of the beast. He's working with influencers. Logan Paul is the prime example, but he's working with influencers, rappers, iShow Speed, names goes on and on, celebrities, to partner up together to expand the brand. Because at the end of the day, as a business, how do you increase your bottom line? It's not by just appealing to the hardcore fans. You got to get the casuals in there. WrestleMania is their biggest weekend. How do you get the most money and the most seats, the most ticket sales? You have to appease to so many different people. Triple H understands that, and he's been able to grow the brand, and in a significant way. However, one of the things that I do think needs to be worked on, and this ties into Obafemi. A lot of people recently have noticed, outside of before Javon, Trick, and Obafemi came up to the main rosters, there was a lack of color shades in the WWE, if you will. There wasn't a lot of diversity um, in terms of the top. Our Truth famously almost getting canned last year, and that turned into a huge movement. But there's not a lot of big names up at the top competing with the Romans and the CM Punks who are black or Hispanic. And that's one of the things I will say that I think needs to be worked on. I'm not one of these people going to tell WWE, oh, you got to start pushing this person because of their skin color. But I do think the days of having a John Cena looking figure is over. I don't think they need that anymore. Someone like an Oba Femi, you know, big muscular guy, very strong, athletic. He has the presence to walk out. The fans chant his theme, they chant his name. He has the power, the aura of a superstar. That could be somebody placed at the top, immediately. Granted, I know just like any other field, you're not going to just springboard somebody all the way at the top unless some nepotism is there. Triple H. But anyway, I digress. I do think that's something they need to work on, and I think they're starting to address. And I want to give those three, gentlemen a shout out because Javon Evans, Trick Williams, and Obafemi, they are killing it. They have made me want to watch the product more because as fans, you don't want to keep seeing the same people at the top, the same matchups. It gets old. You want to see some diversity, some flavor, some mix-ups happening. And I think having someone like Oba and Trick and Javon come on and just inject some life into the WWE has been godsend. But I do think there's a big conversation. There's one thing to bring them and squash them and just let them fade into obscurity, or letting them build themselves up and become the new faces of the WWE. These guys are all in their 20s, some of them in their early 30s. These guys can carry the company for decades. Let them prove themselves. Let them grow and expand. And it's not just inclusive to them. You got Jacob Fatu, who's another one who's kind of at the brim of the main event picture scene. Let them grow, because at the end of the day, this is not 1946. This is 2026. Very few people who watch WWE care about skin color. No, they care about being invested into characters and the storylines. And they want to watch good matches. It's not about race anymore. This is about who put the butt in the seats. Roman Reigns is getting near the end of his career. He's closer to the end than the beginning. Let me say that because I don't think Roman's retiring anytime soon. But it's also, you have to be real. Roman Reigns is probably not going to become a full time wrestler anymore. Who's going to take his place when he's done? You have Solo, you have Jacob. Those are the two leading names that you have. But why not go with Obo, one of these guys, one of these young bloods as well, who can take over and be the face? I think it's time that Triple H, I think he sits down with the board of directors because this goes into my main point. People blame Triple H because he's the most face forward, man in the suit, the man behind the scenes that they can see, and he's more accessible. But let's not get it twisted. TKO, when they brought WWE, they didn't just throw a bunch of millions at them and so we're gonna wait for investments to pay over. They're gonna want to have some input in what's going on, and I don't think Triple H is the sole reason why the product has slacked at times. I think there's a lot of people when you have too many cooks in the kitchen, that meatball recipe might turn out a little weird than you think. And I think so many people have their hands in the cookie jar. So many people's too many chefs is in the kitchen calling for, to oversee one dish that it gets hard to balance it out. And I think that WWE, they should let Triple H and his team take the reins. Let him figure it out and just input it. And Nick Khan, I know he did an interview with Ariel Hawani recently talking about that. You know, taking a step back, letting the people who are going to be there every week, let them take the reins. Let them, write these stories out, storylines out, built these wrestlers up. Let them do it because corporate. Everybody talks about corporate, but it's true. Sometimes they can get a little too hands on, and they ruin the flow. They ruin the product. And I think TKO, they want to see through their investment, and I don't think they're allowing Triple H to have the full reign that he needs. So yes, Triple H has made some mistakes along the way, but I don't think it's necessarily just him. I think that his bosses have the final say in a lot of stuff. I know back then, Vince, people don't talk about Vince anymore because of the allegations and stuff. But Vince was very much hands on. That's how the WWE thrived for so many years because he was the sole guy who approved or denied what was happening on the show. Now you have Triple H, to some degree Stephanie, and now you have the board of directors. Now you have TKO. Now you got investors. Everybody want a piece of the pie, and it makes it hard to kind of put the pie together. As everybody's pushing and taking, and having their input. They need their input heard. So WWE is in a tough spot right now. WrestleMania's looking good for the main event, but I think there needs to be some work done. I think there's some things that needs to be addressed, and I think Triple H being blamed for all of it is not right. Not only to Triple H, but to the wrestlers and the fans, because at the end of the day, WWE is a business, and all they care about is the bottom line. Now, as we wrap up the WWE talk, I just want to say, I think that the product is always going to change. So many people often always, compare what the WWE is now to what it was back then, compare the superstars now to the wrestlers back then. The industry has changed, and I think now, we're at a point. I think in entertainment, UFC, WWE, acting, for me, podcasting, sometimes it's not about the quality. Sometimes it's about the quantity, and it's been more towards quantity now, with a lot of things in sports entertainment and entertainment in general. I think a lot of times people just care more about their bottom line and how much money to make than the quality of the product. And WWE is always going to have their ups and downs. You're not going to have a 365-day year where everything is high. You're going to have the pitfalls. You're going to have the shortfalls. You're going to piss people off along the way, or you're going to make people very, very happy along the way. You know they got to cater to many different personalities, many different viewers, many different people, and they're not going to always get it right. And I do hope that with WrestleMania, some of these new blood, new wrestlers, young wrestlers coming up, that they do right by the company. Cena tried to do his part by leaving it in a better place. He didn't come in with an ego. I'm leaving with an ego. Screw you all. Figure it out. He tried to help establish Gunther, which he's done to the best of his ability. Roman Reigns has put over uh, the tribal thief, Bronson Reed, even though much hasn't happened with that. But we're seeing CM Punk, giving people the rub. I think WWE needs to keep doing that. Make more interesting storylines, make more interesting segments, make people care, get creative. 10 years ago, the whole buried alive with the Undertaker and AJ when they was out in the cemetery. You know, Stone Cold, Booker T at the supermarket with the milk. I think they can do a little more creative stuff. And I get it. Money runs this world. Money runs America, and they gotta make their money. But I think they can loosen up a little bit. Give people some different looks. Give them different tastes. Don't be afraid to invest in new people because at the end of the day, John Cena's gone, and they can't keep calling John Cena. He's done. He might be able to come up, cut a nice promo, and go about his day, but John Cena's done. Roman Reigns is getting close to being done. CM Punk is there. AJ Styles is retired. God knows how many more years Randy Orton has. The Viper Killer, the Legend Killer, not the Viper Killer. Whew. Um, A lot of their big names are up there in age, and they're gonna have to start relying on the new talent as opposed to the old talent. And that's been one of the biggest criticisms of the WWE over the last 20 years. Instead of building new stars, they relied on their current and past superstars. Rely on your new ones because that's how you keep the business going. That's how you keep the fans happy. And that's how you make the product even more watchable. So, that's my WWE talk. I'm going to end it here because I want to make this a 3 hour talk. And I just want to say thank you guys for tuning into another episode. Feel free to let me know in the comments, DM me, let me know what type of things you want to talk about because I'm cooking. I'm yeeting all over the place. I'm working on some great content for you guys. This is not the end of the conversation. This is the end of this episode. Next episode, I will be talking about UFC, talking about more sports entertainment stuff because this show is just getting started, baby. See you guys in the next episode. Thank you for tuning in. Like, follow, subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use. Preferably go on YouTube. Follow because I'm trying to grow this on YouTube as well. All these platforms is great, but let's get the YouTube up. Stay tuned for part 2 is coming right now. We're gonna be talking about UFC. Stay tuned. If that's your thing, I got it all covered. And 3, 2, 1.